Okay. So what we learned yesterday was a discussion as to if someone paid off the chayiv partially, what do they do with the shtar? So we seem to have had a three-way machlokes. In our Mishnah, we have two shitas where Rav Yehuda holds the Edom could write a new shtar, and the way the Rashbam learned when the Edom write a new shtar, they will date the shtar to the date of their writing the shtar. They will not backdate it. And Vibalt, they will not backdate it, then it will harm. It will harm. Actually, I take that back. I'm mixing it up with Tosfos. The way the Rashbam learns is they'll even write a star from the Zman Rishon. Hanishar Mizman Rishon. They write a new star and they backdate it to when the original chayv took place. And Rabbi Yosy says you don't do that. You'll write a receipt that the loiva will have to hold on to until he pays up the entire chayv. Once he pays up the entire chayv, then he'll be able to get his star back. And then we brought a third sheet of Rav, who disagrees both with Rabbi Yehuda and with Rabbi Yosy, and he holds Bezdin writes a new star, Mizman Rishon. And then either Rab Nachman told Rav Huna or Rabbi Abba told Rav Huna, if Rav would have heard this brisa, then he would have for sure agreed that the Edom could write the star. The Tanya Edom Mekarnis HaStar, the Koisen Loi Star Achar Mizman Rishon. If he would have heard that, if Rav would have heard that brisa, Havar Hoderbe. Amar Lei, so Rav said, Loi Shemili, I didn't hear about it. I'm sorry, Shemili, I did hear about the brisa. And even though Rav heard the brisa, Rav was not choiser. Rav still had it has to be done through best. Zok Gemara on the top of Kuf Ayin Aleph Amar Aleph, which is today's Gemara. B'Shlama Baydina, I understand Rav Shita. We're writing up a star and we're predating it. It's not so appropriate. But Baydina Alimi Lav Kuli Momina. Bezin could write up a star, and using the power of Hefker, Bezin Hefker, they can predate the star. And that means now the Mava will be able to collect from the original date on the star. Ela Edim she'asu shlichusam, Edim who have already completed their shlichus, choyzin vayzin shlichusam, could do it again. Now this is a very interesting way of asking how could the Edim write a new star without using the right date. Tosfos doesn't like the way the Gemara articulates this, but the Rashbam learns Edim shazash lichusan lichtov ulahayid b'shtar arisha. They were the ones who witnessed and said Edus with the first star. Hey choyzrin v'ois shlichas acheres. How can they now go do a new shlichus? And as the Bach sticks in, Demi noisen lahem koyach said, who authorized them to write this new star? Are you suggesting that it cannot? Amarav Yehuda Amarav, Edim Koisvin, Afilu Asora Stories al Sadachas. Edim can write, let's say they're writing about a field that Reuben sold to Shimon. They can write the star 10 times. And what does the Rashbam say? Why would they need to write a star 10 times? Misha Ovid story, for someone who lost the star, the Amar Edim Kis V'liacher, and he asked the Edim, please duplicate the star for me because I lost my star. So right after the bat, we just learned about this yesterday. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel holds you can't. It's only the Rabban that holds you can write if there's no achrayis. So that's what this must mean. Rabbi Yosef Omar b'shtar matana. Rabbi Yosef says this only applies to a shtar matana. Why? Because a shtar matana never has achrayis. If you get a matana from somebody and then it gets taken away by Zlachayiv, you're not going to go back to the person who gifted it to you and say, hey, I need another one. Rabbi Yosef Amar la'olam ein koyach b'yodam shal edim lachzor v'lichtav shtar achar ligvois v'lekuchos. For sure, the secondary star, the replacement star will not allow the holder, purchaser, the receiver, to take property away from the lekuchos. The Chikam Rav Yehuda Marav, that Rabbi Yehuda Marav said that Edim Koisvin Afilu Asor Stories Hanamili B'Shtar Matana Shein B'Achrayis. That would only be if there was no achrayis. And the box changes the next vav to a dalad. Dik kivan da kol yoidin shenoisen lo yasoda. Since everybody knows that Reuben gifted the son of the Shimon, lama lo yichtavu lo shtar matana. Why shouldn't you write for him a shtar matana to record that? Lios biyadei laedus the teku ar biyadei, so that he will be able to assert himself over this land. Rabbi Omar the shtar she'ein bayachrais, or it might be speaking by a shtar mechira, but you write a shtar that doesn't have a chayis, similar to what we said yesterday. Rabbi Amar afilu b'shtar mechira kamer Rabbi Yehuda the koisvin nasar. You can write 10 stars if required. Uchagoy the less b'achrais, but that's only if there's no achrais in the shtar, and therefore the person who it was written for will not be able to be goyim melekuchais. Uchadamin leil chutz me'achrais shaboy, like we said earlier. Like Reb Nachman said, star the chasvinu loy lemikveh. This star that we're writing, this replacement star, should never be used to be goiva, not from the lekuchais, not from the lekuchais. Right. Zog the Gemara, my brisa. What was this brisa that Rav Huna, who was it? Rav Nachman told Rav Huna, or Rav Yirmi Ba'aba told Rav Huna. What is this brisa that you're referencing? That if Rav would have heard this brisa, he would have changed his mind. The Tanya we learned. Hare shall you notion by elav zuz. What if someone owed $1,000 uparme chamesh and you paid up 500 out of the $1,000? Uparme chamesh meyos zuz. So you owed 1,000, you paid up 500. So the halacha is edim mikar nesashtar. Adam rip up the original star that says you owe 1,000 zuz. Because v'no star acher mizman rishon, and they write a new star from the date of the original star. Divi Rabbi Yehuda. So you see, Rabbi Yehuda holds that you write a star mizman rishon. Even the Adam to write a star mizman rishon. If Rav would have heard this, he would have said, he would have passed on like Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yosy Omer star zeh yemunach b'mkoimai. You don't rip up a star. The Marvel keeps the star that says he's owed a full 1,000, but v'yichtavu shoiver, but you'll give the loiva a shoiver, so that the loiva has some proof that he paid off half of the loan. Umipnei shnei devarim amru koisvin shoiver. And Rabbi Yosy tells Rabbi Yehuda, there's 2 reasons why I'm right and you're wrong. There's 2 reasons why you write a shoiver rather than rewrite the star. Achas, reason number 1 is kedei sheyakov l'poyrei. If you're a loiva and you have a receipt that you paid 500, but the malva is still holding on to a star that you owe 1,000, you're going to do whatever you could do to pay it up as quickly as possible, because you're afraid if something happens to your shoiver, you're going to be liable to pay the full 1,000. So that's a good thing, Zok Rabbi Yosy. I want the loiva to be under pressure to pay up as quickly as possible. I also want the malva, if he has to collect from the kuchais, to be able to collect mizman rishon. And if you wrote a new star, the new star would not have zman rishon on it. The new star would have the new later date. Frank the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda nami mizman rishon ka'amar. Didn't we just say a moment ago that Rabbi Yehuda said that when the Adam rewrite the star, there are a lot of predated to the date of the original star? Zok the Gemara, hali ka'amar le Rabbi Yosy le Rabbi Yehuda. This is what Rabbi Yosy told Rabbi Yehuda. Im mizman rishon ka'amrit. If you're saying that when the Adam rewrite a star, they dated the date of the original star, then poligna lach b'chadet. Then I have one reason why I argue on you. I still think you should write a shoiver because that pressures the loiva to pay up. But imizman sheni kamrit, if you taka meant that you only when Adam rewrite a star, they could only use today's date. So then poligna lach b'tarti. So then I have 2 reasons to argue with you. So at the end of the day, here is our machlokes, Rabbi Yosy and Rabbi Yehuda. Clarified over how the Mishnah stated it, and then we have the Shita of Rav, who argues on both and says that Bezdin has to do this. Hanarabban, Shtar Shizmanai Kosov B'Shabbos. What happens if you have a COVID vaccine certificate that's dated April 31st, right? So you have a shtar that's dated on Shabbos. It's impossible that the halva occurred on Shabbos, because Jews don't work on Shabbos. Oy Basra b'Tishrei, or on the 10th day of Tishrei, incidentally, that is Yom Kippur, right? So the halacha is we automatically say that shtar ma'ucher. We automatically say, of course, the transaction didn't happen on Yom Kippur. The transaction probably happened the day before Yom Kippur, and the shtar is post-dated. Now, if a shtar is predated, it's possible on its face because you'll be able to allow the malva to mun from the date on the shtar. But a shtar that's post-dated, according to certain people, it could be allowed. So it has a din of a shtar ma'ucher and therefore a kosher. We'll say you couldn't have done the loan on Shabbos. You probably did a loan on Sunday, and the shtar was written. The shtar was written in. You probably did the loan on Friday, and the shtar was written for the next. The kosher, it'll be kosher. I'm not sure if what I'm saying is 100% accurate of why it's a shtar ma'ucher. So I'm going to read inside the response. Shtar ma'ucher hu v'kosher divi Rabbi Yehuda. That's going to come up. That's what we're talking. Maybe the cheshbon day of the week was right. The Svir lo Rabbi Yehuda kol shtar ma'ucher kosher. Anytime the shtar is dated after the loan occurred, that was a kosher shtar. V'afilu oisai she'ein lo haichiach mitoicha shel shtar im ma'ucher hu v'imlav. In this particular shtar that you wrote a date that came out on Shabbos, we know you made a mistake because you must have written the wrong date because we don't do transactions on Shabbos. But what if that wasn't the case? What if you literally wrote a shtar mocher? It didn't come out on Shabbos. You wrote a shtar that was dated a week after you actually did the transaction. That's also kosher according to Rabbi. B'chol shekein zeh shezman b'yom HaShabbos u'b'yom Kippurim shezman machiach shu mocher. A regular shtar mocher, no one knows that it's a shtar mocher. This shtar, it's obvious that it's a shtar mocher because when you look at the date, you'll see that it fell out on the Shabbos, which couldn't possibly be. V'afilu Rabbi Yosy moedebei the loynafik minei churva mehai kedem afarish vazel. In the moment we're going to say that Rabbi Yosy puzzled a shtar mocher, but this type of a shtar mocher, where it's obvious minei ubei from the shtar that its date is inaccurate because its date comes out on Shabbos or on Yom Kippur, that Rabbi Yosy agrees would work. They don't say what day of the week is. Right, so it was right. So such a mistake, but such a mistake you'll still know. Once you check the calendar, you'll see. Someone did, right? Listen, I usually look at the calendar for transactions to make sure it's not on Shabbos. Or if I have to forge a document, I'd make sure that it didn't come out on the Shabbos because I don't want to ever be accused of. Don't suggest that maybe it's mukta. Maybe you made a mistake on the date and you predated it instead of post-dating it. You're not worried about it. Okay, so let's have a look. Let's have a look weiter. Zogt the Heilige Gemara weiter. So Rabbi Yehuda says it's going to be kosher. Rabbi Yosy Poitzo, he holds it's going to be kosher because he doesn't like a shtar move. Omalei Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda told Rabbi Yosy, I don't understand. How could you say that it's possible? There was a story that someone came to you with a shtar mocher and you validated the shtar. Omar Loi. So Rabbi Yosy told Rabbi Yehuda, Kishech sharti bozech sharti. I didn't stamazoi accept and validate the shtar mocher. I validated the shtar that was mocher because the date came out on Shabbos. So it's obvious that it's mocher. Isn't that what Rabbi Yehuda is talking about? Rabbi Yehuda is talking about exactly that case. And on that case, it says Rabbi Yosy Poisel. Zok to Gemara, Omer Padas, Hakol Moedim, She'imuskaknu loy nosei shel shtar. If we looked at the date on the shtar and we looked at what day of the week it came out on, it turns out the date written on the shtar happens to be a Shabbos, oy ba'asar b'tishrei, or on the 10th day of Tishrei, shtar ma'uchahu v'kosher. Everybody would agree that such a shtar is kosher because on its face you can tell that the date is off. Loy nechalko, you know where there's a machlokes between Rabbi Yosy and Rabbi Yehuda, ela b'shtar ma'ucher ba'alma. So before we get into the machlokes of a shtar mocher b'alma, we understand Rabbi Yehuda what time it could possibly be. the Malva will not be able to collect from day one. They'll only be able to collect the date on the star. But what bad thing could happen? So we're going to get there in a moment. But let's have a look at the discussion over here. Rabbi Yosy Poisel star ma'ucher. You know why? The Alma regular star ma'ucher she'ein b'soicha yachacha klal. You can't tell just looking at it that its date is later than the transaction. Rabbi Yehuda says you were mad to this. Amalek shechsharti bozeh shekos was mani b'Shabbos b'yom Kippurim there yechsharti shemitoichay moichiach shalanichtav b'zmana. It's obvious that it wasn't written on the day that it says. Shari ein Yisrael kotzin shtoris b'Shabbos b'yom Kippurim, and therefore v'akol yavinu shum ucher. Everybody will know that this star is a ucher. V'loy novik minei churba kalikaman, and there won't be a case where the malva might collect from the kurosh shaloi kedin. But if it's Ma'ucher Ba'alma, but it's Ma'ucher Ba'alma that you can't tell because it wasn't a normal weekday that you post-dated it to, and you can't look on its face, you can't tell if it's a Gret Ma'ucher. That's where Rabbi Yosy says, I'm arguing with you, Rabbi Yehuda, not apostle, the time of the command. Amar Rapadas, Hakol Moedim Rabbi Yehuda v'Rabbi Yosy, b'chol star smuchorin be'in zek ish on the skoken limnois l'mosai magi'ay nosa shestar v'nimtas oinis his man akosaboy mechuvin b'yam Shabbos b'yasar b'tishrei. Everybody agrees when you have a star that has a date, and when you look it up on the day of the calendar, you'll see that it works out to Shabbos or Yom Tov. Asar b'tishrei is much easier to know that it's Yom Kippur, right? A regular date, you know that it's Shabbos, you have to look it up in the calendar. Shtar ma'ucher huzeh the kosher l'divrek. There, even Rabbi Yosy would agree that it's kosher. The dummy, it's just as if kimishakasav b'stoicha ishtar denan dechasvenuhu. It's as if the nusach was written right in the star, the following nusach. This star that we wrote, lav bizmanei kasvenu, we did not write the star on the day that the loan took place. Elanan tzahadi ichvenu v'kasvenu. Us Adam wrote the star later and dated it later. Everybody knows that it wasn't actually written on the day that the date comes out to be. And they'll know that it's a mocher. And therefore, even according to Rabbi Yosy, where there is a potential problem, which we don't know what it is yet, but even if there was a potential problem of a get mocher, if it's obvious that it's mocher, that will mitigate the potential problem. Also, the katani, the star that we discussed here, meaning the date fell on Shabbos, star shekasav zman b'Shabbos, that it will be kosher. Rabbi Yosy said, yes, here I'm machshir, where it's obvious that it's a post-dated get. However, in a regular case of star mocher, I think there's a very big problem, and I cannot validate such a star. I'm sorry? Yes, it could have been, yeah. So the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda, in our Mishnah, what does he say? You rewrite the star rather than write a receipt to the loiva. So if you don't write a shover, there's no problem with the get that's mu'ucher. But Rabbi Yosy, remember, he said on our Mishnah that you let the malva keep his star intact as is, and you write the loiva a receipt that he paid. What does writing receipt have to do with the chover? Very, very simple. What would happen if the loan really occurred on Gimel Tishrei? Okay, that's when it really occurred, and the star was written for you Tishrei, right? And the loiva came up with the money. He was fortunate that he came up with the money by Hey Tishrei, and he ran to pay back the malva, right? And the malva says, "Oh, I don't have the star." The malva gives him a receipt that he paid back on Hey Tishrei. Now he'll pull out a star that says he borrowed money from him on Yud Tishrei. His receipt will be useless because the date on the star is after the date of the receipt. So the malva will say, "Yeah, you're sure you paid me, but that was a different loan This is a new loan that you borrowed from me later. That's the churva that Rabbi Yosy holds will happen with a shtar meucher. But if the shtar was on Yom Kippur, then I'll say, nah, it wasn't really a shtar meucher. Really, it happened before the transaction. But they made a mistake on the date. So therefore, you won't be able to come collect out from me if I have a receipt. So let's see the response. But not the churva. I'll leave it to Rabbi Yosy. The Mefarish also, like the Gemara, is going to explain. Okay, the next shot that the Rashbam wants to quote, I don't want to learn it because the Rashbam writes over here, V'cholza hevel v'latzonasu. The next shot that the Rashbam brings down is hevel v'latzonas. So we'll skip this. So Zok the Gemara as follows. Amar Rav Huna. Bared Rabbi Shua. Afilu l'man da'amar kosvin shover. Even if you write receipts, so the loiva will have proof that he paid off whatever it was that he paid off. Hanamili apalga. That's only if he only paid half, and therefore you can't ask the malva to surrender his shtar. Avalakule. But if in fact the loiva paid it all, you do not write a shover. Rather, we can insist that the malva surrender his shtar. Loy. But v'loihi, I disagree. Aleph nebach ella afilu akula kasim. Even if the entire amount was paid off, and the malva claims he doesn't have the shtar, the malva can still demand the loiva pay him without retrieving the shtar, but the malva will write a shayf. Kiyad Rabbi Yitzchak by Yosef have a masak bezuze b'Rababa. Rababa seemed to have owed a lot of money. Right, 2 days ago he owed Rabbi by Yosef money. Remember? And he said I have an edim that I paid back. Remember? And they said, oh, you have edim, you got to produce those edim. So Allah Kamed Rab Chanina bar Papi. They went to Rab Chanina bar Papi. I guess he didn't want to go to Rabbi Nafcha. It didn't work out so good for him last time. So he went to Rab Chanina bar Papi. Amrlei Havli Zuzai. Give me my money. He told Rab Abba, give me my money. Amrlei. So Rab Abba said, I'll give you your money, but Havli Shtaroi. Give me your star. Surrender your star. Ushkol Zuzach, and I'll be happy to pay you in full. Amalei, so the Malva said, so Rabbi Yitzchak by Yosef said, I'm sorry I lost your star, but don't worry, pay me anyway. Echtov loch tavra. I'll write for your receipt that you paid me in full. Amalei said, I'm not willing to do that. Rav Shmuel, the Amri Tevayu, ain't kosvin shover. Rav and Shmuel hold, you don't write a shover. I'm not willing to write a shover. I'm not willing to write a shover because I'm not willing to write a shover because I have to hold on to the shover. You have to give me the star back. That's how only I'll pay. Amar, man yoiv lon me'afet Rav Shmuel. Oh, halavai we can have from the offer of Rav Shmuel. In other words, oh, they were wonderful. They were wonderful. But Rav Shmuel were wonderful. Rabbi Biden, we put their earth in our eyes. We want to absorb whatever we could have. They were so holy, but nevertheless, we don't pass with Rav Shmuel, and we hold that you do write a shover. And therefore, you have to pay me, even though I'm not surrendering the star, but I'm going to write for you a receipt. You write a shover. It's mistaver to say that you write a shover, and now the onus is on the loiva to watch that shover. If you hold that if the malva loses his star, there's no recourse for the malva, and the malva will not have to pay, and the loiva will not have to pay. So are you telling me if the malva loses his star, so the loiva can laugh and never have to pay? That doesn't seem fair. Maskav la Abaye, we'll look at it from the opposite perspective. You're going to force the loiva to pay and just accept the receipt? What if the loiva loses his receipt? You can make the same time of the opposite. If the loiva loses his shover, then the malva will collect again. That's not fair either. It is fair. It's fair that the loiva should be at a disadvantage. Because Eved loiva ishmal, and Eved, the loiva is an Eved to the malva. He borrows money from him, and it's appropriate that the loiva should have to have the responsibility of having to wash the shover. Okay, let's see the Rashbam inside. L'tamei, the kosvin shover. Heicha the par miktas chayvay. When do you write a shaver? Like it says in our Mishnah, if part of the loan was paid off, and we cannot ask the malva to surrender the star. But v'toyin malva irchas. Or in the case where the malva cannot produce the star. Kedem first the command koisvin shaver v'noistin loiva loidisha par kol chayvay. He needs a receipt to prove that he paid in full. That's why a star me'ucher is possible, because if the shaver is going to be dated before the date of the star, the malva will claim that there was a whole new loan that he's collecting for. The malva will claim, I lost my star. Or in the case where he didn't lose it, when only half of the chayv was paid, where that's where Yosy holds the tchila, you write a shaver. Because of shaver l'loiva, yochel malva l'haitzi acher akain star chayvoi shekos of zmanoi acher zmanoi shaver. He can pull out a star that was dated after the date of the payment. The yomer, and he'll claim a moment acher who's a shalovi semimenu acher akain. This was a new loan that you borrowed from me after you paid me off. The yikve kol chayvim yisholim, and he'll now collect the whole chayv all over again. And you do a shul mucher. We can't tell on its face that its date is inaccurate. Avostar shekos of zmani b'Shabbos or Basra b'Tishrei, there lemotzin lemer hashtu the yasros minoi. He won't be able to claim that he borrowed it on Shabbos, and it's new. We know the date is off, and therefore he will not be able to collect with that star once again, even though its date is after the date of the shayv. That's only if he borrowed only half. The loiva needs a receipt, so the malva won't be able to collect all the chayv since half of it is paid off. But we would never write a receipt for a full chayv, because there the malva has to surrender the star. The malva ifsed an nafsheish lo'nizar lishmar shtarai. The malva was responsible to watch the star, and he did not. But the Gemara concludes in Mistaver the koisvin shaver akula chayv hechadich star. If the malva claims that he lost the star, we will insist that the loiva pay anyway and accept that shaver. Why? But just because his friend lost the star or his friend lost his shaver, he should have to lose? The Gemara concludes better that the loiva should be at a disadvantage, and the loiva should be responsible for holding on and to protect his shaver, because eved loiva lishmalva mutav sheyei toyech v'daigas shmir star mutal ala loiva yoshim namal. Better the burden should be upon the loiva rather than on the malva, because of eved loiva lishmal. Zok the Gemara anusad. Knan hasim. Shtarei chayv hamukdamin psulim. If a star is predated, it's possible. That's obvious why it's possible, because the malva will be able to collect from the kuchais that purchased prior to the actual day of the loan. But if a star is postdated, then there's no such peril. This that star chayv hamu'ucher is kosher is only a star halva. Avol star mekach memkar, but if it's a star that says Reuben sold his property to Shimon, afilu miuchorin nami psum. That will be possible even if it's postdated. Why? My timer zimnin de mazvin le'arab Nisan. Let's say on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, Reuben sells Shimon a piece of property, but he didn't write his star that he sold a property in Nisan. V'chasav le'betishrei. He wrote that he actually sold it 6 months later. So the star recorded the sale that happened today. The star recorded as having happened 6 months later. Now, what happens is, so Reuben sold it to Shimon, and it says today's Nisan, and it says on the star Tishrei. In Sivan, Reuben comes up with money, and he convinces Shimon to sell the property back to him, right? So Umisrabel Azuzi Beini Beini, Vizavin Lemine, and he buys it back from Shimon. Okay, and it says in the star Mechira, where Reuben bought it back from Shimon, that on Sivan, on the Chodesh Sivan, Reuben bought the property back from Shimon. But the problem is, Shimon has a star that he bought it the following Tishrei, because it was a post-dated star. The Chimot Tishrei, Mapvikle. When Tishrei rolls around, Shimon's going to pull out the star Mechira that says he bought it in Tishrei. Well, Amalei, how does it want to be enough? Yes, you bought it back from me in Sivan, but then I bought it from you once again the following Tishrei. So, frankly, more if there is such a concern by a star of a sale, why wouldn't you have exactly the same concern with a star halva? He might borrow money in Nisan, but the chaz of the star of Tishrei, but he'll write that the loan happened in Tishrei. And the loiva will come up with the money in Sivan. Uparale will pay off the loan. He will ask the malva to surrender the star. The malva will say, I cannot surrender the star because I lost the star, but I'll write you a receipt. The receipt is dated on Rosh Chodesh Sivan. The chimat is maveh. When Tishrei comes around, mapikle, Shimon will pull out the star. Now you borrowed money from me once again. Yeah, you paid me back in Sivan. But you borrowed money since then. You borrowed money in Tishrei. Zog to Gemara, you know why we don't have a concern that this could happen by a star alva is kasavar and kaisen shover, because he holds that you don't write a shover. So if you don't write a shover, this is not a concern because the loiva will not have to pay unless the malva produces the star. So there's no concern that there'll be this clashing. Amalei Rabbi Yemar le Rav Kahana, v'amalei Rabbi Yirmiyah midifti le Rav Kahana. V'ha'idna nowadays, now the girsa is very messed up. So let me just look at the Bach. Ois Dalet. Ha'idna the loika of din and hachi. Nowadays we don't do what we just said, meaning the kasvinan shtare ma'uchri. We actually do write post-dated stars. V'chasvinan tavra. And we write receipts. So how are we going to deal with this? Why wouldn't this pose a potential problem for a malva and a loiva, right? How could you do that? Omer lei, Basra da amalu Rab Abba, we only do it after Rab Abba came up with this eitzah. Basra da amalei Rab Abba l'sefrei, he already told his soifrim, ki chasvisu shtari mu'uchri, if you are going to post data star, which we say would be valid, kisu hachi, you need to write and add these words into the star mu'uchri. Star denan loy bizmanei kasvene. This star, even though it says that it's dated July 1st, it didn't happen. We didn't write it on July 1st. This really happened June 1st, but we post-dated the star. So it'll say right in the star that it was post-dated. Since it says right in the star that it was post-dated, there's no concern that he'll pull the star out with a date that's after the shofar. I don't know why they do. What's the point in making a star mucher? Why people do crazy things? I don't know. Right, but this is not that. But they don't do that either nowadays. Looking back at the hay, we don't do that either. We still write shovers and we still write mu'uchers, and we don't write this nusach in the star mu'ucher that says it was written late. So Amar Lei, he told him because of a different thing. Basar the Amar Lahu. Basar the Amar Lahu. Rav Safra l'Safrei. This is after Rav Safra instructed his farm that ki kasvisu hani tavri. When you write receipts, so you don't write anything in the star, but in the receipt you can write extra information. If you know the date of the post-dated star, kisu, date post-date the shover as well. So if the star was post-dated to August 1st and you're in June, on the shover write August 2nd. So it will neutralize the threat of him pulling the star later. The Eloi, but the Eloi, what if you don't know the date on the star? You're here to write out a get, but you don't know the date on the star. So how are you gonna know when to date it to? You know what you should do? Kis fustama. Don't put a date on the shover. Just write Reuben paid Shimon $10,000 without the date. Now, whenever he pulls out a star, he has a blank check, literally, right? He has a shover saying that he paid back. There's no date on the shover. It happened after your star. Any time that the star could be dated, no matter when it is, his shover will neutralize that star. So the problem is, what if he taka borrows money later? Again, What are you gonna do? What's this Malva supposed to do? So Krishna have a very simple answer. No, the Mishra says simple answer. What does it say in the star? Reuben paid Shimon back $10,000. Don't lend him $10,000. Lend him any amount, but not $10,000. Lend him $9,999.99. Lend him 10,001 cents. So therefore, the shover will only work for a loan that's exactly that amount. Amalei Rabbeinu Rabashi. So Rabbeinu told Rashi, Amalei Rabashi Rav Kana. And there are those who say this was said by Rav Ashi Rav Kana. The ha'idna, the loik of dinachi. Nowadays we don't do that either. So we still have a problem of a post-dated star, and we don't have this, and we write the date on the shover. How are we going to get around that? The loik of dinachi. Amalei Rabbanon tekunde tekini. The Rabbanon made a takana that you could do this. If you write a shover, you insist on making sure that the shover either doesn't have a date, or make sure you know what the star was post-dated to, and make sure to write in the star what it is, because the Rabbanon made a takana for you to take advantage of. If you don't, then you're hurting yourself. Manda Ovid, someone who follows the takana and uses the eitzah of security. If you have two-step verification, then your bank's information would likely not get stolen. The banks give you the option of two-step verification. They don't force you to take it. So the smart people that took it, their accounts will be secure, and those who don't want to avail themselves of the extra security feature will put themselves at risk. He brought this upon himself. Amlu Rabbi Barshila, Lahani Kasvi Shtara Akni Isa. Okay, this is a whole new studio. We'll stop here. We'll learn this session tomorrow. Everyone should have an awesome day, and we should be like that one till Shabbos, a Shabbos, Simcha, Bracha, Nakas, of whatever we want. We should get all the matanos that Yaakov gave to Esau, and then some.
Go ahead.
You talking about food? I thought they didn't have minion. I saw they